This is the Extra Point Podcast. During this podcast, we will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the Extra Point.
Hey, welcome to the Extra Point. I'm Cheryl Ross, the Next Steps in Discipleship pastor here at Southwood Church, and I'm with Scott Beha, our lead pastor. And we just finished up our last week of Silent but Deadly.
Praise the Lord.
But before we go any further, I just want to remind you that if you have not liked or subscribed to this podcast, make sure that you do so that way you don't miss out on any new content. This past Sunday, you talked about laziness. And it's one of those things that, some of these things we feel like are kind of silent, but obviously, all of them actually do end up affecting others, and people notice them.
Yeah.
They do come out in ways, but this is one that I feel like is a little harder to hide at times.
Yep.
But I think that it's because we maybe think that it is easy to hide because we don't think of it always in the way that you kind of shared about it yesterday. Like work and laziness, you shared it in a different way, but you kind of had 4 points about laziness, and the first one was that laziness is a spiritual issue, not just a negative character trait.
I think most people that aren't super familiar with the Bible, which is, the vast majority of people that call themselves Christians, would be shocked to find out how much the Bible has to say about laziness. I know that when I was being introduced to it, it was shocking to me. I was like, man, the Bible really has a lot to say about this because, again, a lot of this has to do with the narratives that we grew up with surrounding the church.
Right.
That it was like there was this certain category of things that we preach about, and then there was another category of things that, you think aren't in the Bible because no one ever talks. In fact, I had someone come up to me yesterday after the second service. She came up and she goes, I'm 73 years old. And I've never heard a single sermon on laziness in my life.
Wow.
73 years old. So, well, I've been in ministry for 13 years, or 12 years, never done a sermon on laziness, so I'm part of the problem myself. But that's like really, I think that's the sentiment, is we don't realize how big of a deal this is in regards to, because there's a lot of stuff that the Bible talks about that we go like, oh, no, that's not. That's not one of these sin issues.
Yeah.
That's just like an undesirable trait that if you weren't to have it, things will go better for you.
Right.
It's like that's not this is a big deal. This is a big especially in the topic of laziness, what I fell in love with last week was that it opened up the opportunity to talk about other areas that surround this, like work and rest and all the other stuff that we got into. But laziness is not just a bad character trait or a bad character quality or a bad habit, which it is all those, but much more it is a spiritual issue. I would really suggest if people want to find more stuff in this same vein, go and read C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. He points out somewhat things that we would call character flaws or just personality traits and stuff that we might go, oh, that's not a big deal, where he's he calls them out. One of them that it struck me in that book, he talks about cowardice as an ungodly trait in someone. I thought, man, just someone that's a little fearful, cowardice is not a godly trait. So it's the same thing with laziness. It's not one that you think about very often, but it's something that we should definitely consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, that really goes into your second point about how work is good and we're called to it. And I love because you explained that work is not just what we think about it typically, what we've created it to be. Because for the stay-at-home mom and the people who feel called to do that, that is their work. It's different, but it's that where you said work is producing, creating, curating, and caring for the created order.
Yeah, I was watching a video of someone last week trying to get some ideas for how to talk about laziness because I've never done that before. And the very first comment on this YouTube video was someone going, well, I'm disabled, so are you saying of course we're not saying if you have medical issues that make you not able to hold a regular job, that you're a
Right.
lazy bum as far as the Bible is. That's
Mhm.
crazy. Or it's also not saying that if you're a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad,
Mhm.
or you're just like,
Mhm.
maybe you just are wealthy, and like your family was just
Mhm.
wealthy, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just a lazy person just because you don't have the traditional work,
Mhm.
but it means, or if you're retired,
Yeah.
none of that means, like, so we have to expand, because all I was thinking all last week, I was like, gosh, I'm
Mhm.
going to get up and preach this, and then somebody inevitably will come up and go, well, what about this? And it's like,
Mhm.
I mean, just use your brain. Do you really think the church is going to say that you're
Right.
lazy if this is the case? But this is directed to people that are genuinely, um, like, not putting to use what God has given them,
Yeah.
or are deliberately taking advantage of other people
Mhm.
and their hard work
Yeah.
because they don't want to work hard.
Yes.
And that does happen as well.
Mhm.
And so the thing that I feel so strong about in this, and again, this has to do with the narratives that most people deal with in church
Mhm.
growing up, is that most people, when they go to Genesis 1:26, they stop
Mhm.
after, let's make man in our own image. And
Mhm.
they don't see the divine human vocation that follows that. They just think that this is a story of God creating someone and then putting them in a garden. And then sin messes everything up, and then boom, now we got the whole rest of the book to
Mhm.
try to fix the sin issue. It goes,
Right.
that's not the story of the Bible. The story of the Bible was that God put his image in his created order to take care of it.
Mhm.
And they rejected that human vocation by
Mhm.
not wanting to be God's image bearers, but wanting to be God himself. They didn't want to work for God. They
Mhm.
wanted to be God,
Mhm.
and therefore sin enters. It's a totally different story than what
Mhm.
most of us. And again, we have bad theology surrounding work,
Right.
because we don't understand that it was actually what you
Mhm.
were made to do.
Yeah.
Like, most people are looking forward to, like, an eternity of not having to
Right.
produce and not. It's like, no, this is what you were made to do. But what you don't realize is that in the new heavens, the new earth, whenever you work, it will be fulfilling.
Yes.
Like, it's that, like, everyone probably has that experience where when they're doing something that they are just in their sweet spot,
Mhm.
it does not,
Feel like
like,
work.
drag them
Right.
down,
Yeah.
right? Like, when I am writing sermons, I don't feel like I'm working,
Mhm.
right? Like, I just, like, we're doing these devotionals
Mhm.
for next year, and I just spent like an hour researching one little 2-minute devotional because I
Mhm.
love it.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that. I could do a 2-minute devotional with my,
Yeah.
with no research,
Right.
but I love it. So it's
Yeah.
so life. That's why I'm so fired up right now
Yeah.
over a 2-minute devotional,
Mhm.
right? But, like, there's other times that,
Mhm.
um, like 3 weeks ago, I had to prepare for the annual open forum
Yeah.
that I have, like, that in and of itself just was like, ugh.
Mhm.
And that's how most people feel about their work.
Mhm.
And that's, like, there's always things that fulfill us and things that drag us down. The work that you do in the new heavens and the new earth will always and only be
Mhm.
that fulfillment type of work.
Yeah.
Um, and so work is a good thing.
Mhm.
Most people hate their jobs because they're working in areas that they're not actually passionate about,
Mhm.
and they're just trying to make a paycheck,
Mhm.
right? They're trying to make a living rather than trying to make a life, and
Yeah.
that's why they're miserable.
Yeah. And I think it's so important, like, to really understand and know what you're called to do as well, because, like, I remember when I was pregnant with my first kid, like, I had a lot of pressure about, like, from certain family members and people about, you know, hey, are you really going to go back to work? Are you really going to keep working? I know that I'm called to work, like, just as much as, like, a stay-at-home mom might know that they're called to be at home with their kids. Like, and I think knowing what you're called to do and being okay with that and not looking at other people and what other people think is really important within it too. To know, like, hey, this is the work I'm called to do. And so knowing, like, hey, if you're retired, if you're wealthy, if you're whatever, like, what you're called to work, how you're called to care for the world and do that, like, is different
Yep.
than other people, and that's okay. And knowing that and realizing it. But rest, your third point was that rest is very vital to our calling and health. This is where I think you even said it, that this is where a lot of people, they don't work well because they don't rest well.
Yep.
And this is an area that like I struggled with early on, especially in ministry, because I went from like, I mean, I think we both did, being a volunteer to being on staff, and I couldn't separate that. Like, I wanted to volunteer all this extra time. And I remember the pastor at the time kind of sitting me down and being like, hey, I want you to keep track of when you're actually here, because I don't want you to end up working so much that you're getting paid like way below minimum wage because you're working so much. And I'd be like, oh, well, no, I'm volunteering this time. But it's a habit and a practice that I've really worked on over the past couple of years. Like, I took my sabbatical last year.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think is extremely important. And I'm in a peer huddle, like a peer group. And one of the things that one man said that hit me so hard was that, like, because it is a commandment, it is something that God set up for you. Is that he said, one way or another, God's going to get those days from you. And wouldn't you much rather take those when you're healthy than when you're not? And I was like, oh, man, because I can tell you how many times, like, my body has shut down or something has happened that has made me have to rest instead of just doing it on my own in the first place.
Yeah. I take very seriously the staff culture of our church in regards to rest, and I try to model it because I think that's the only way the rest of the staff will give themselves permission to do it. Because, like, you can have all the stuff in your employee handbook that you want to create a rested staff, but if the person at the top doesn't model that, and if the church doesn't allow the staff to model that, then it's all just words on a page. It doesn't really matter. And so, and this is an area where I think that I've grown a lot, because early on, I had major issues. I was like, no, I'll take 1 week off a year. That's it. I don't need any more than that. And maybe for some people that is, like, when you're in your, mid to early 20s and you don't have kids and you just got married, like, all right, you can do some working and stuff. But now it's like I fully believe in this, like, being rested always leads to the best. And so we try to do our best whenever we can to, like, really educate our congregation on that, because there has to be an understanding from them as well that, like, hey, there's just going to be times like that you're going to have to have another pastor or an elder or someone in your small group is going to have to meet that need for you, because we just can't be
everything for
on
everyone.
call 24/7. That's what, like, when people go into ministry, they tell, like, young people going into ministry, they're like, just get ready for, it's a 24/7 thing. It's like, no, it's not. It's absolutely not. And it's not supposed to be like that. And the only reason it is like that is because a bunch of unhealthy people for decades and decades decided to make it that. Like, I remember Megan's family will tell me a story about her grandpa, who was a pastor. Like, they were on vacation down at Myrtle Beach and got a call that someone in their congregation had passed away, and he had to leave his family vacation to come home and perform a funeral. I'm sorry, I know that on the surface to a lot of people that looks very noble, but on the other side of that, no, that was incredibly wrong of that congregation to do that to him. And that was
wrong to his family.
That's wrong to his family. Yeah, I was in a pastor's meeting back in March down in Charleston, South Carolina. We were at a retreat for pastors trying to find rest. We were going around the circle, and this one guy was sharing how he felt so guilty that the week before he was down there in South Carolina on this retreat with us, that he had a situation come up where he was out with his son, his teenage son that he's trying to connect with, and he gets a call from someone at their church. Hey, so-and-so's in the hospital. You need to go immediately and see them. He was out with his son. And so what he did, he this poor man is just bawling and crying, telling the story. He took his teenage son and dropped him off at a store so the way the mom could come pick him up. because he was told he had to go immediately to this hospital. And it was like, I'm sorry, that right there is not going to be that's not going to be the culture of a church that's ever going to work.
Yeah.
Like there's just been stuff even in the last month where it's like I had a week where I was watching your kids for you, and listen, that was as much ministry as anything.
Yep.
And there was at least one time that week that I had to go, listen, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I've got these other I can't do that. I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't go and do that. And then the very next week I was on vacation, and I did the extra point with you when I was driving to Tennessee on Monday because, I'm sitting in a car. I don't mind that.
Yeah.
But the minute that interview was done, I did not respond to a single message from anyone at this church. And even when I got back on Friday, I was like, told Megan, I said, we're gonna extend this all the way through Sunday. I'm gonna go to a different church, and I didn't respond to anyone Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I think Sunday night I probably jumped back in and started sending out messages of what next week was gonna look like and all that. But I want to model that, and then allow people here to do that because well-rested people are so much better at what God has called them to do.
Yeah.
And if leaders don't model it, then the people that they lead they won't do it. You will find yourself in just massively unhealthy situations. Like, honestly, go and watch these, the documentaries of these guys that are, destroying their churches and families.
Yeah.
And a lot of it came from, I swear I think some of them can't find a way out of these, really unhealthy church cultures. And so they have to literally destroy themselves and their family to finally find a way out.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be, I want all of us that work here, I want our kids to love this church.
Right.
Not to, most PKs grow up hating the church because their parents were poorly treated by the church and had unfair expectations. Like, oh, you're going to get, interrupted in the middle of family dinners and holidays and all this. It's like, I'm sorry, it just should not be like that. There's always going to be someone that can take care of you. But you have to have a different expectation.
Yeah.
That's why we try to get people into small groups and all this. But
yeah.
But the theology of rest, and I know not everyone works at a church, so not everyone gets to have that sort of. But look, if you're a business owner, you should run your business in a way to make sure the people that work for you are well rested. You would be crazy to think that the success of Chick-fil-A doesn't have anything to do with the fact that every single person gets a day off,
right?
At least one day off every single week. You would be crazy to think that doesn't have something to do with the level of success that they have. I know Megan's uncle worked for one of the huge tech companies like IBM or Dell or something like that, and I didn't even know secular companies did this, but he was on a sabbatical, like a major sabbatical one year. I was like, gosh, that is so
if you look up Google's, even their maternity leave and all that, they have nap pods, they have it's crazy. I mean, they have really, really great stuff because their part is that it's better to allow their employees to have that and rest and come back stronger than it is it's better and more financially responsible for them than trying to bring in somebody new and retrain them and get them to that production level that the current employee is at. And so those companies who are super successful, if you look at what they do for their employees, you'll see those kind of things.
See the results, man.
And it is one of those things. If secular companies are doing this, why on earth would we expect anything less? And that's where and this can happen regardless of whatever job you're in. We had family in this past week, and our cousin's wife, I was talking with her, and she was like, she works for Liberty, the college, and she was like, they've offered me other positions that are higher up. She was like, but when I asked them, hey, my family matters to me, I don't want to have to work extra, I need this, and they try to tell me, well, no, you'll occasionally have to do this or that. She's like, I haven't taken them because I value my rest and my time with my family more than that. And I think like that's the difference. And she was like, and God's provided always. Like we've still been fine financially because of this, or like, and I think it's part of that faith and trust to know that like, hey, I can rest and like I'm doing something God's telling me to do, and I can also trust him to take care of me when I do what he tells me to do. Like,
because look, if you don't work at a place that values rest the way that we've described it here, at the very least, you need to make sure that within the parameters of that place that you stay healthy. So if they offer breaks, take your break. I can't in what world, I don't know what we've done that like, oh, I work through break, I work through lunch, I stay late, and you get a pat on the back for that. That's not healthy behavior whatsoever. That should not be commended. That should be changed. So within the confines of that organization, maybe you're not in charge, so you can't really lead change on this. If they offer you a break, take it. If they offer you a lunch, take it. If you have the opportunity to leave at the same time every day, do it. Yes, things always come up, right? Like we're off here on Fridays and Saturdays. Am I off every Friday and Saturday? No, but we take care of ourselves in so many other ways that when those are the exceptions, they're not the rule, and they don't hurt nearly as bad when you've lived out the rest in other areas. So that's, do whatever you can within your organization's culture. Leave early, don't volunteer, like whatever amount of money it is that you're like, oh, I got to have this. Like, yes, there will be times that it's like vital and you have to do that, but it can't be all the time. You can't just be chasing dollars constantly, because then your work will suffer, your family will suffer, and you'll realize that no amount of money will ever be able to replace what you've now destroyed.
Right. Yeah. And I think that like goes into your fourth point of, not wasting what God has given you. And you really talked a lot about like the family and the spouse and the relationships and that aspect of it within this. And I think like the point that you used was really good within the parable of the talents. So let's dive deeper into that a little bit.
Yeah, this parable in Matthew 25 is a warning to not waste what's been given to you. There's this story of this master that entrusts these three guys with certain amounts of talents, and we get our word talent in English from this, but it was an amount of money, and they were meant to go do something with it. And when the master comes back, only two of them did something. The other one buried it in the ground and did nothing with it. And the master comes back and he calls that person a worthless and lazy servant, because the master entrusted him with something, and he did nothing with it. And for me, I know people in our congregation that have gifts, talents, and abilities that go unused simply because, well, we're just too busy in other areas of our life, or, like, listen, if God has given you an ability to play an instrument, you should use that for God's glory. If God has given you the ability to sing, like, especially in those two areas, that folks like that really, like, I'm envious of, because I have no musical ability. I would love to be on the worship team. Jared won't let me on it, but I can't sing or play. I'd love to be on there. That's why I come up early before I preach, so I get just even a little glimpse of it.
Yeah.
With my microphone turned off, of course. But there's people like, if you can play and sing, but you don't do it, like, come on, man. I would kill to have that ability to do that.
And I think there's that fulfillment in it too. Like, you know what I mean? If you are great with kids, if you are good at teaching, like,
do that.
Why aren't you doing that?
You should, and you will find out. I know that it doesn't fit into your schedule great or whatnot, but that you will get so much it will not feel like a job if you're operating in those things that God has given you to do. And so there's just a lot of untapped potential, but not even just like here at church. Like, there's people that God has gifted you with all sorts of abilities that you're not putting into use. Like, maybe God has given you the task of starting a podcast, of writing a blog, of writing a book, of being a mentor, of being a volunteer at a nonprofit, or all sorts of, or
Mhm.
maybe it was he gave you the vision to start a business that's
Mhm.
going to bless all these people, and you're doing nothing with it.
Mhm.
Like you have all this God-given potential and talent and ability, and like you've just settled into what's comfortable for you right now. And like for me, in all of these areas that I mentioned Sunday, I feel like there will be and are a lot of people that get to the end of their life and they look back and go like, is that like did I miss it? Like I was just too busy out there just doing my
Mhm.
thing. I never really went
Mhm.
after God's best in my life.
Yeah.
And like, sure, you can have a nice life like that, but like, you could also have some regret. Like, I feel like
Mhm.
that's what's going to happen to like marriages where the two people take each other for granted during the kid years
Mhm.
and they don't pour into their marriage when the
Mhm.
kids leave. It's like there's this deficit that goes like, well, gosh, I don't even know who this person is
Mhm.
really. We've just been raising kids together for the
Right.
last 18 years,
Yeah.
and they didn't pour into their relationship, and
Right.
so now there is no relationship when the kids are gone, and the one thing that was bonding them together, the kids, is
It's
gone, and
gone.
now their relationship is gone. And they go
Mhm.
like, you didn't realize the whole time that you were wasting what God has given you, that precious gift.
Mhm.
Like, um, what is it in the book of Proverbs says that finding a good wife is more precious than
R-
silver or gold
rubies.
or rubies. Like, goodness gracious, like
Mhm.
if God has given you someone to share your life with, how could you ever like
Mhm.
not invest in that? How could you not treat it for exactly what it is? Like, I talk to guys about this all the time. Like, if God has given you a wife, you have to think, especially if she's a Christian woman, you have been gifted a daughter of a king, a princess, and you have the audacity to treat her as anything other than that. My goodness, what a wasted opportunity.
Yeah.
Women, you have a Christian husband.
Mhm.
That's the son of the king.
Mhm.
How could you waste that opportunity to invest in that relationship that
Mhm.
God has blessed you with? Like, same thing with kids. How, like, we're too busy working and getting into all this other crap to actually raise our kids.
Yeah.
How could we waste those opportunities? So it's not even just talents and abilities that go wasted. It's the very people God has put into our lives,
Mhm.
like young people that have cut their parents out of their lives
Yeah.
and go, oh, we don't have a need for you
Mhm.
anymore. We've got our own thing going on. It's like, goodness gracious, like having family is a gift.
Mhm.
How could you just waste it
Yeah.
like that by not, serving them and loving them? Like,
Mhm.
it's so bothersome to me because that's like most people would go, well, I have a job, so I'm not lazy. It's like, yeah, but you have
Mhm.
aging parents. What are you doing for them?
Mhm.
What are you like? Because like Jesus even talks about this. He talks about the Pharisees. He's like, you tithe off of the smallest
Mhm.
things that you have in your garden, but you have neglected to take care of your family.
Mhm.
First Timothy even said, if that's you, if you haven't taken care of your family and the family of faith, you have neglected your faith.
Mhm.
Like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, so no, you've got a job, but maybe you're lazy in other areas. Like
Mhm.
one of the things that hit me so hard is that when I when it comes to home stuff, like I'm like really like ADD about stuff here at the church, like really type A. But when I go home, like if my house is dirty for a month, like I don't care. But but like what God was speaking to me last week,
Mhm.
he goes, look, like you've been given a home.
Mhm.
You've been entrusted with this. This is an asset for your family. Take care of it.
Yeah.
Take care of it. You've been given a vehicle that you treat like a garbage can. Take care of it.
Mhm.
Like take care of the things that God has entrusted with you.
Mhm.
The talents and abilities, the people, the possessions, all of this stuff. Take care of it. They were gifts from God. And if you don't do
Mhm.
that, then yeah, on some level, I'm not saying on every level, but on some level you're lazy. On
Mhm.
some level I'm lazy because I don't take care of the stuff that God has given me.
Yeah.
In some ways, I've just buried it in the ground,
Mhm.
and that's what it's going to be. It's
Yeah.
not. It's never going to reach the full potential that God intended for it to reach.
Yeah. I think that's so important. I think, that verse about with everything that you do, work
Yep.
as if you're working for the Lord. And I think that is incredibly important, because that's one of the things that convicted me week 1, where I was like, oh, with laziness in that Romans passage, it said something to that effect. And I was like, I don't think that I do everything for the Lord. And so I think that's really one of those big takeaways, with everything, every part of your life, every area of your life, everything He's entrusted you with, treat them as the gifts they are, and work for the Lord in that area. Think about Him in those things. And so, we are starting a new series next week, our Christmas series. So we'll be back here again next week with another extra point and some more practical next steps for your faith journey.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.